Hello and welcome to another tutorial video from Matt Clausen Consulting and CAD Management Solutions. Today we will describe the configuration of NavisWorks Managed Clash Detective. This video will cover the following three areas: model preparation, clash configuration, and report generation. Model preparation is fundamentally important to getting correct clash reports from your model. Native design files can be directly appended to the NavisWorks model. However, there are a few issues to consider. NavisWorks WF files are live and will read the source document every time it is opened. If you freeze modeling during a clash review, changes to the model's source files will affect the results. Number 2. If data tools are used to display database properties, NavisWorks performance will be considerably degraded depending on the size of the database. A more efficient option is to generate the NWD files overnight for use in the walkthrough. These NWD files are then isolated for the duration of the clash review, where they are not affected by changes to the live models. In addition, database properties are embedded in the NWD files, eliminating the need for NavisWorks to query the database during the process. NavisWorks Batch utility can be used to generate the NWD files. Once you have your model built in NavisWorks, you can define your search sets. Search sets are dynamic selection sets that can be set up once and will dynamically update based on the content of the walkthrough. There are two types that I like to use when defining search sets. They are inclusion and an exclusion search set. Now let's define a search to include these two. The first step is to open the Find Items pane, and you can see here in our example that I've already set up a couple of settings. Here you can see I'm using a data tool set from a Plant 3D project. I have selected the project and the model name, and I'm using a wildcard so I can get the piping models. You will see from the drop-down menu that in this case it will just be these two files. In a larger model, you would most likely have a larger variety of files. Here we enter PIP along with the asterisk for the wildcard. Now the second line is defining items that I do not want to include in the selection set. And in this case, it is equipment. To be more specific, this is Plant 3D equipment. You can see here that it has actually selected all the pipe as well as all the pipe supports. So now we want to save this to a set. So if we click on Sets and then click on Manage Sets, this opens up our selection set list. I've organized it into Clash Review search sets and Walkthrough search sets. This is just the way I find that works best for me. As you use this program, you'll find the best way that works for you. At this point, we won't be too concerned about walkthroughs. For now, we'll just deal with the Clash reviews. Now moving on. As you select here, the program makes the selection in the graphics window. And as you can see here, the program is very helpful and only selects the supports. When we go to the search window on our lower right, we can see the program has isolated the supports because it's pulling information from the data tools, and we have the class name, which you can see here is support. As for our piping, we are pulling everything in the PIP files, and we are excluding the equipment. For the equipment selection set, our program is grabbing everything from the PIP file. But according to the parameters, it has to be a piece of equipment to show up under the equipment selection. Then the program is grabbing the structural components. Now that we have these search sets all defined, we will begin with the clash configuration. So let's open the Clash Detective pane, and we'll see here we don't have any tests defined. So now we'll define our tests. The first thing we need to do is to begin adding our tests. With our program, tests can be imported from an existing file if you have clash tests already defined and you are using those tests on different projects. For this tutorial, we will be adding these tests manually. To do this, press the Add button. The first test we define will be piping. Enter the name of your test here in this space. Then once you're done, select Add Test for any additional tests you want to run. The second one will be structural. Once again, we'll select Add Test. This third test will be equipment. So we will enter Equip. Now we'll be testing for interdisciplinary clashes. So we add a new test, and we call it Piping Struct, Piping Elect, and lastly, Struct Elect. The reason I use this naming convention is because it works with the Clash Management Suite that allows you to edit clashes inside AutoCAD. We will move our cursor up to the top of our Clash Detective window, and we'll begin defining what we want our clash test to be. Here we will click on the Rules tab and we'll define our rules. These will allow us to fine-tune our clashes, and we will see here that I have a piping supports rule. And to create a new rule, click on New. You can name the rule, and then you can use this area for the rule description. Obviously, it looks the same as our Edit pane. In our Rules Editor pane, we are calling this Piping Supports, and you can see I am ignoring them if they are in specified sets. And then we are checking items where there is a piping component and a support component. If we have piping and supports in the same clash, this rule will ignore them. Now we can select our piping test. We will turn that on and click the Select tab. And let's go set our selection sets. Have a look at these drop-down menus. Next, go to Sets and expand Clash Review. Expand Include, and we will want to select Piping. And then, for this instance, we want to include surface geometry and lastly, a self-intersecting check, which essentially means that our program will check for the clashes in itself. Now let's run the test and see the magic happen. As you can see here, we do not have any clashes at this time. Now let's go back to the Rules tab and turn off the Piping Support rule. And now we go back to the Select tab and then press Run one more time. Now after changing the selection, we can see that we have 7 clashes. We do like to run interdisciplinary tests as well. These tests will be named Piping Struct, Piping Elect, and Struct Elect. Now we also set up some basic rules to help ensure the accuracy of our clash tests. To do this, we click on the Rules tab. And as you can see here, we have piping supports. As before, we add a new rule by clicking New, and then we fill this area in with what we need. This brings up the same type of dialog box as Edit. In the top, we have the rule name, and I am ignoring them if they are in specified sets. To dig a little deeper into this, if we have piping and supports in the same clash, this rule will ignore them. We can select our piping test, so we will select it now and turn it on. Now let us go and set our selection set. To do this, we click on Sets, we expand the Clash Review and select Include, and then we select Piping. Once this is done, we want to include surfaces, and we also want to add self-intersect. Selecting these choices will cause the program to check everything in this test against itself. Once this is all set up, we can click Run Test. Now you can see here in the Clash Detective pane that we have no clashes. Right now, we will go back to the Rules tab, and we will turn off the Piping Supports rule. Now let's go back, and we will select and click Run. Now we can see that we have 7 clashes, that being between the piping and the support. So that's good to see. Now let's go set up the structural rule. We will press the Select tab, then select Sets and click Include, and select Structural. Again, we will want to include surface geometry and we want to select Self-Intersect. Now we will run the clash test. Now we can see that our program has found 204 clashes. This makes sense because the program is reporting where the beams and the columns are intersecting with each other. We won't define electrical as we don't have any electrical in this drawing. However, we will do piping and structural next. We will go back to the Rules tab. Now, as a side note, we do not want to clash items in the same file, so we're not checking piping against piping and structural against structural. We also don't want to do a piping against supports. We will press the Select tab, then select Sets and click Include. Now we want piping and equipment, and we will turn off self-intersecting because, again, this is a piping and equipment and a structural test, because we've already done the piping and equipment clashes. As a result, we will go over to Section B and choose Structural. With this selection made, we can run our tests. For this test, we have 12 clashes between piping and structural. We do not have any clashes between electrical because, as we said earlier, we have no electrical in this model. With all this work completed, we are now ready to generate our report. For contents, I like to ensure that everything is turned on, and I have found over the years that it's better to have too much data than not enough. One other great tip about that, we always want to have all of our statuses checked so that we can keep track of the progress of the clashes through this process. What I have found best works for me is to write them out to separate files. Again, this works best with Clash Management Suite for working with clashes in AutoCAD. Now that we have that completed, we will write the report. First, find your project. Once we locate the project, we go down to the walkthrough and then the clash report location. Now we can click OK. They are ready for use in other programs. And it's just that easy. And then next we open the folder and we can see our clashes. Now, this has been a longer video, but it needs to be to highlight all the great features the Clash Management Detective has to offer. This program makes easy work of finding various clashes in your projects. To order a copy of our Clash Management programs, please head over to our website at www.mkci.ca. MKCI is a CAD support and management solution provider located in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and we have the experience to provide your company the solutions necessary to outperform your competitors. As a member of the Autodesk Developer Network, we can help you leverage your Autodesk software to improve your edge and strengthen your bottom line.